Kakadosh Boker Or Bekiim Bahalacha 6, day 32, page 85, Siman Kuf Samechet 158, Halacha Lamed Daled. Okay, 34. Says Halacha, Aochel Davar Shetivu Lo B'Mashke, Tzarich Litol Yadav Kodem Achilato. If you're going to eat something which is going to have contact with the liquid, so we're going to explain, you have to do Netilat Yadayim before eating it. Aval Lo Yevarech, but you don't make the bracha of Netilat Yadayim. Kevin Sheish Poskim Shosvim says because there are some poskim that say that you do not need Netilat Yadayim. Right? Now, even though the halacha is that you're obligated to wash your hands, nevertheless, to do with the bracha, it's safek berachot lakel. ויש להקפיד בנטילה זו, so you have to be מקפיד on this נטילה, ככל הדינים שיש בנטילה שקוראים לאכילה פת. So it's going to be בדיוק אותו דבר, right? אצל הממשוס, נטילה של דבר שתיבו לו במשקה, like the נטילת ידיים of סעודה. Right? שתהיה מכלי, has to be the utensil. וממים שלא נשתנו מראיהם, has to be from water that does not lose its appearance. Meaning if you're going to have water and it changes colors and all these things for whatever reason, you can, and yizair mechatzitza benetila. You cannot have hatzitza, right? No pasex, yeah, no chatzitzot, yeah. Well, it depends if it doesn't go through and everything. Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah, we're gonna speak about it, right? But some people I heard that they purposely put on the ring. Yeah, fine. So he comes and he says like this, "Ma'im genuvim min taku." It makes the thrill much better. Yeah, see the preface to these halachot.
You said that the women that they, the women.
So he comes. Some people they only had a little tiny thing. Some people it's mamash an amula around the neck. Boom! All of a sudden, he feels it's tight. It's tight. It's tight over here. I feel it. It's yeah. So he says the act of netilat yadayim. Yeah. Are you listening? The act of netilat yadayim. So he comes and he says this. Yesh li lazhir. את השוטפים, הפירות וירקות במים, שצריכים ליטול את ידיהם כל מאכילה, שאף שלחיצה זו באה להעביר הלכלוך, מכל מקום חשיב דבר שטיבו לו במשקה. Something incredible. I thought that we're only talking about that you're doing something as a dip. Right, now remember, we're going to speak about the 7 liquids, because it has to be specifically one of those 7 liquids, but it's not only just a dip. I take an apple. Now, usually what do people do? They rinse the apple before using it. Now, why do you do that? Because of hygiene. But the fact that right now the apple is moist and it's wet, how's it wet with? With water. Water is a problem. Water is one of the 7 liquids. So now I would have to do netilat yadayim to eat this apple. Now there is a way to get out of it, obviously. How is it? Which one?
Just eating with
utensils. No, but there's another way also. What did you say?
Wash it with milk.
No. No, derech agav, chalav is one of them. We're going to speak about it.
To peel it.
Dry it.
That's all basic.
Dry it. After you wash it, dry it. And now when you're going to come and you're going to make the bracha, or you're going to make the bracha va'etz, it's not, there's no mashke anymore. There's nothing there. That's what we just said. We were reading. I just read it. I see you don't understand English. Let me read English again. One more time. When someone wishes to eat the food, yes, so listen. When someone wishes to eat a food that has been moistened with a beverage, he must perform netilat yadayim before eating it. But he must not say the bracha al netilat yadayim, since there are poskim who rule that it is not necessary in this case. Although the halacha follows those who rule that it is an obligation, yeah, we must refrain from saying a bracha because it's a fake bracha lakel. It's a bal. 1 minute. You're right. That's why you should use like what Roman said. Use a utensil. Right? I always said, nowadays, let's go. So, halacha number lamed hey. So, again, remember, just anybody that's going to rinse out fruits, you have to be careful, because once you rinse out the fruit, you have a problem. Halacha lamed vav. אין דבר שטיבולו במשקה צריך נטילה, אלא בעוד שהמשקה תופח עליו. When do you have to do דבר שטיבולו במשקה? Only if the משקה is still there. He says, אבל אם נתנגב או נתייבש, עליו ונסתפג. Yeah? What happens right now if you dried it up? So what happened? No, you don't need to do it at the time. ואפילו אם יש בו עדיין קצת ללכלוכים, but what happens if it's still a little tiny bit moist? So he says, as long as it's not going to be תופח על מנת להטפיח, it's called נתנגב ואין צריך נטילה. You know what it's להטפיח? For example, inside the apple, there's a little bit of... No, inside for sure, there's no question. Even on the outside. Like, you know, the top. On the outside, right, if I don't have enough to be tofeach al menat latpiach. Tofeach al menat latpiach is kacha. Let's say I've got an apple, and I've got liquid. And I do this, and now I do this. Is there going to be liquid over there? That's called tofeach al menat latpiach. But if it's not enough, that when I come and I do this and then I do this, it's not going to go there. That's not called tofeach hamen al piach. Let me see how he says it in English. He says, if the food is only slightly, but after touching it, one's fingers become wet enough to moisten yet another surface. Then the food is still considered wet, and you need netilat yadayim. But if it's not moist enough to wet another surface, so the food is considered dry, and therefore netilat yadayim is not necessary. Okay, so he says the exact same yisod, which is what we explained. Yes. Yeah. He comes down and he says, Halacha lamed zayin, 37. Afilu im en yadav no go b'mekom hamashka, tzrich netila. What? One second, we're going to speak about everybody else and everything. 1 second. So now he says like this: even if it's going to be that your hands are not going to touch, right, the netila, right? What does that mean? Even if you're not going to touch the place of the mashke, you still need to. So, for example, I have it's wet only on one side. So you know I'm going to hold the apple from the other side. Yeah, chacham. See, he comes and he says, yeah, exactly like the cookie and the thing. So no, you still need netilah. V'lachen, and therefore, hamtabel peri or yerek v'mashke, your case doctor, that's why I continued, right? If you're going to dip a fruit or a vegetable in a liquid, right? Or we used to do it always croissants in the tea or things like that, like, or the tea biscuits in the tea. Well, why is it called tea biscuits? They used to put in the tea. Apple, nahani, anything. All these, even though you're only doing the front part, meaning the top part or whatever it is, right? Right, you do netilat yadayim, v'hu mishum gezerah shema yiga. It's a gezerah, right? What's this? No. Vehu adin, the same halacha would apply. If you're going to do it with a spoon, you also need netilat yadayim beforehand.
Wow.
But even if you're going to wear gloves or you're going to put it inside of a like a napkin, you have to do netilat yadayim. Let's see the halachot. There's a lot of halachot today. So let's see. Number 31. Right? 1 second. 31. So 31 comes and he says, we are on, where's 31? There it is. 31 is that even if you're going to use the spoon or a fork, Maran the Bet Yosef rule, the one must wash his hands as long as one is holding the moistened food, even if the end, right, even if the end one is holding it, right, is not moistened at all, right? So you come and that means you're not even holding the moistened part. The Achronim debated what the halacha is if somebody is going to use a food or a spoon or a fork, right? So imagine you're using for the food a spoon or a fork. So
it's always going to stay moist.
So he says the erech lechem, right, and Rav Avraham Azulai ruled that in this case it is not necessary to wash hands. They explained the Maran rule that it is only necessary to wash them because you're touching the food itself. But when you're using a utensil, there's no obligation. The Knesset Gedolah and several Achronim, however, ruled that even when using a utensil, one is obligated to perform netilat yadayim. See the Ben Ishchai and the Kavachim Sofer. So it comes out of machloket. Do you need to do netilat yadayim if you're using a utensil? Obviously, there are some opinions that say that you do not need to. Okay, that's what it was brought down, right? Right? And others say yes. So you have a machloket. Okay? Next. Eating moistened foods that are not normally touched at all. Several Achronim rule that it all depends on the food that you're eating. If the food is normally held in one's hand when eating, so even if someone decides now this time to use the utensil, so you'll probably still end up touching it, right? In these cases, one is obligated to wash their hands, although one plans to eat with a utensil. If the food is usually eaten with a utensil and you never touch it with your hands, so then there's no reason why I'm going to touch it with my hands. Harav Zalman added that in such a case, it is not necessary to wash the hands, even if it turns out that the person in eating the food touches it. The Al-Chabra cited a number of Achronim who ruled that if the normal manner of eating the food is to use a utensil and not to touch it at all, one may be lenient to not perform netilat yadayim. He bases lenient ruling on the fact that some poskim rule that it is never necessary to wash hands when eating any moistened food with a utensil. This gives us a compound doubt to rely upon for the leniency when eating this type of a food. First of all, there's the opinion of Tosafot that you don't need to wash your hands at all. Secondly, there are those who say that if you're using a utensil, you don't need it. So therefore, we could rely on this at least when eating foods that are always eaten using a utensil. Everyone understood? So one more time. The doctor mentioned before the Shitat Tosafot. Shitat Tosafot is you never need to do netilat yadayim for davar shetibul memashke because it was not instituted for that, right? So basically, we don't have the problem. This was brought down already in the preface, if you remember, that the preface brought Shitat Tosafot that disagreed with Rashi. They explained that the mitzvah netilat yadayim for moistening food is a technical measure to avoid causing drops of beverage to becoming tameh, and this applied only in the times when we had halachot tuma v'tara. Nowadays, there's no problem. So therefore, the Tosafot says it doesn't apply nowadays. So that's Shitat Tosafot. because of this Tosafot, right? But the majority of the poskim say yes. Whether it's Rambam, Rif, Rosh, I'm saying the majority of all the Rishonim, they say yes. So because the majority of the Rishonim say yes, Shulchan Aruch says yes. Right? There's nothing to talk about. So Shulchan Aruch paskins like the majority of the Rishonim. You're right. You have one Rishon, but fine. But I could use it as a snif leakel. What is a snif? I could use it as a branch to rely upon, something as a support system. Tosfot. So number one, Tosafot. Right? But on his own, you can't use it. Why? Because if the Shulchan Aruch paskins not like Tosafot, and he paskins like the majority of the Rishonim, so on its own, it doesn't help. I've got another one. Using a utensil. So even using a utensil is also a machloket. Does it work or doesn't work? So here in the footnote, what he says is, however, though, what happens if it's a food that you always use a utensil for? Right? What does that mean? You don't usually eat it with your hands, right? So in such a case where you don't usually eat it with your hands, so therefore in such a case, you could rely upon the two of them together. Number one, you have a utensil, right? And number two, even if you're going to tell me that using a utensil, you would still, right? You would still need to do it, right? You have halacha number two. What's halacha number two? Tosafot. So because putting them both together, but let's say I usually use my hands, and only now I want to use a utensil. So therefore, in such a case, I would still say, no, it doesn't help. Why? Because, you're keilu using your hand in 2 seconds. You're going to come and take it with your hands. In a sense, so it doesn't really help. Okay? Understood? Very good. Okay? Then it says, it appears for the Ben Ish Chai, however, that it is possible to be lenient only when eating with a utensil of food moistened with beverage that has been cooked. Since many poskim rule that if the entire washing of the hands does not apply, right, in a cooked beverage. If the beverage has not been cooked, it appears from Ben Ish Chai that he's not going to be lenient. Okay? What about a vegetable soup? So he says, based on this principle, Yalkut Yosef explained that common custom of eating vegetable soup with a spoon without first performing Netilat Yadayim. This is because people always, not only it's cooked, because also you always use it with a spoon. You're never going to eat with your hands. Vegetable soup. No, you're right, Benny. It's two things, right? So he says, even if it happens that someone does touch a soup while eating it, he's still not obligated to wash his hands, following the rule of Rav Zalman. When using utensils to eat a food that is normally eaten, right, that is not normally eaten with the fingers, right? So he says, actually, there's a stronger basis for leniency because, again, it's been cooked. So besides the fact that one uses a utensil, Siblo and Halacha 39, nevertheless, as long as the normal way to eat the food with a utensil, so therefore it's going to be okay. Okay, last one, number 32. When someone is in a situation where there's no water, right, is available to form Netilat Yadayim, it is permissible to wrap one's hands with a cloth to eat. This is the case both for moistened foods and for eating bread. See below in 163. So there we're going to speak about this halacha. So again, when we talk about this halacha, obviously we're going to speak about that over here. Does it the same halachot apply? So basically it's going to be the same halachot. Okay?
That a fruit,